And welcome to the Cardinals Nest here on HBC Channel 25. Dean Beckman along with Donny Nadeau, the Sports Information Director for St. Mary's. And this is the first show of 2010. So, Donny, Happy New Year. And we're starting off this new year with women's hockey as our guests later on here in the interview segment of the program with Terry Mannor, the head coach, and one of his sophomore players, Nicole Olson.
Yeah, it should be fun to talk to Terry and to Nicole. I mean, they've been off now on a pretty long break for the Christmas holidays. They get back into action this weekend, so it'd be nice to talk to him about how the break went and you know, whether the athletes came back in the condition that he needs them to be in. Because now it's 8 weeks of every weekend they'll be playing, and it's all conference games. So now, as they say, we're playing for real. So it'll be good.
And whose birthday are we celebrating on the show today?
Well, it's not Terry's. Let's put it that way. It's not mine. And is
Must
it yours?
be Nicole's.
Yeah,
it's not
there we
mine
go.
either. So, and Nicole is a student worker of yours.
Yes, she is,
too?
and she's an excellent student worker.
So we'll get lots of information
Absolutely.
on Nicole a little bit later on here in the program. But first, let's talk about what's been happening with St. Mary's Athletics since about the early part of December, which is when we had our last show. And Donnie, we'll start off with men's basketball. They had 4 wins when we last did a program in early December. They're still at 4 wins. They have 6 losses. However, most of those losses in the middle part of December and at the end of December, first part of January here, have been very close games against excellent teams.
Yeah, you look at that. They played Gustavus before break. They lost by 3 points. They played St. John's just after break. They lost by 7 points. In between those two, they played NCAA Division II Winona State, and a very, very good game there. Lost down the stretch. They lost by 13, but it was a much closer game than that until the very final minutes. So they are playing some very good basketball. There's some ups and downs, and you know, Coach Landrum's been around enough that he knows that, you know, with a young team, which he really has, there's going to be some growing pains, and they didn't play real well on Monday against Carleton, and I know that he's hoping, as we're taping Wednesday, that his team can rebound and play much better at Hamlin. But it's you know, he's seeing glimpses of some very good performances from his team, and he's seen some glimpses of some things that they certainly need to work on. So I think all in all, if he were to give his team his midterm, I'd probably say it would be a B to a B. Mm-hmm. And you know, obviously there's always things that he can work on, but they're playing some very good basketball too.
We'll go back to that Gustavus game for just a minute. It was at St. Peter. Gustavus, always one of the top teams in the conference, along with St. John's, who they lost to later. And that was a 3-point game. They had a chance to tie it right at the end, didn't pull it through, but that's one of those road games. And I know Coach Landrum isn't a moral victory kind of a guy, but I think if there's one you could point to that might be it.
Right. I think more than anything, it does give a statement to the rest of the conference that, you know what, St. Mary's is a team that you're going to have to watch out for. You can't take us for granted. We've got some outstanding offensive performers. You've got Will Wright and Lucas Holland, and freshman Chris Palmer is doing a great job, and Tim Kunkel's really stepped up his game. So there's more than just, you know, the Will and Lucas show that we had last year, and I think that teams are certainly going to have to pay attention and be prepared to play us because you know, as Coach Landrum has said many times, they're going to show up and they're going to give you everything they've got for 40 minutes, and you know, you start to look past St. Mary's, and I think that it's gonna come and hurt some teams.
What impressed me the most in that Winona State game, which was right here on HBC, is that St. Mary's took it to Winona State, and that hasn't always happened in years past. Winona State, of course, one of the top Division II teams in all of the country, but St. Mary's didn't shy away, took an early double-digit lead in that one, and was with Winona State through most of that game.
Well, that's another one of those statement games for them. You know, they don't want to be the other school in Winona, and they want to prove that, you know, St. Mary's basketball is a good product, and I think that they proved that at that Winona State game, that you know, they can play with teams like that. Right now, it's just a matter of they've got to be able to put that performance together for an entire 40 minutes. The Winona State game, they had a couple of lapses that, you know, Winona State took advantage of to you know, recover from that early double-digit deficit, and I think those are the things that, you know, Coach Landrum will need to clean up a little bit, and it's just making sure that you've got that complete performance for a complete 40-minute game.
And they've had a lot of home games early, have the men's team, and so now they're going to get tested on the road a lot in a short period of time. After the Hamlin game on Wednesday, they go to St. Thomas. They go to St. Olaf after that, and so they're going to see sort of what they're made of on the road now.
Yeah, and the reality is you know, we talked about this. Really, you've got about 8 weeks left in the winter season, in the regular season, and in basketball, you're playing games on Wednesdays and Saturdays, and you're throwing in 3 weeks where you're going to actually play Monday, Wednesday, Saturday. And so there's a lot of basketball to be played in a short amount of time, and it can become a grind. And the key is going to be is which teams can not only stay physically sharp, but which teams can stay mentally sharp as well. And St. Mary's is in the midst of one of those right now. They played on Saturday, they played on Monday, they'll play on Wednesday, they'll play on Saturday, they'll play on Monday, they'll play on Wednesday. So it's a long stretch of a lot of games, and like you said, with 3 of those on the road, always tough in our conference to play on the road. So this would be a really big test to see what kind of team Todd will be able to keep together as they start making their way through January.
Right. Coach Mandy Pearson's women's basketball team 2-7 as we go into the big stretch now in the new year. And we were both at the Carleton game on Monday, Donnie, and that was a disappointing. It was a 10-point loss, but it was in overtime. And the St. Mary's had to come back in that one from an 18-point deficit. And even though Carleton's record wasn't that great, they had played some pretty good teams. They are a good basketball team. It was nice to see them come back from that big deficit. One I know Coach Pearson would have liked to have won, as they ended up losing in overtime.
Yeah, I think it's one of those, you say a disappointing loss. I would almost say it's more of a heartbreaking loss because they did in the second half. They battled back from an 18-point deficit. With 8 seconds left, they've still got a 2-point. They've got a 2-point lead. Weren't able to hold that. They did turn the ball over, and Carleton did tie it. And then in the overtime, Carleton made 14 of 14 free throws. You put a team to the line 14 times, and they can make all 14.
And for the game, I think they were 22 of 24.
Absolutely. So it's one of those things that I think the game was even certainly more close than the final 10-point deficit. But you're right. It was one of those that they probably should have won. And hopefully, I talked to Coach Pearson this morning before we came on the air, and asked her, I says, was this a good learning experience? And she says, yeah, there's a lot of things you can take from a game like that. Obviously, as we talk about teams not liking to take moral victories, but you just look at coming back in a 20-minute span from 18 points down. That says a lot about your team. You're not going to give up. You're not going to throw in the towel. That's a good thing to build on. Jess Thone, a freshman from Woodbury, Minnesota, had a phenomenal game.
Wow, did she
27 points, 22 of which were in the second half. So I think that the more comfortable that Jess gets with playing the collegiate game, I think the more games you're going to see her do that. She's a very good scorer. She proved that when she played at Woodbury, and I think right now she's starting to get into some confidence. And as she builds that confidence, you're going to see her drain threes like she did on Monday night. And I think that that's what they need right now. They need somebody to help take the burden off of Sherry Kulig and off of Jess Miller, and give them that third person that can do some scoring.
Right, and they really, by and large, are such a young team yet. I mean, the point guard, Renee Pecorina, is a freshman, and so they've got so many building blocks there. And even the returning juniors and seniors haven't played with this lineup last year, and so everybody's still trying to get used to working
it's
together.
Funny, they've played 9 games, and it still is a learning experience, and it probably will be this entire season because you're right. Kim Kaminsky is one of the 5 starters. She's the lone senior. You've got Jess Miller, who's a junior. Sherry Kulig's a junior. Then you've got Jess Thone and Renee Pecorina as freshmen. So it's gonna take some time to gel that together, and Jess Miller's having a phenomenal junior season. She scored 29 points against Gustavus right before the break, which is an outstanding performance. So, I mean, they're starting to actually get some offensive production that's more than the traditional 12 or 14 or 15 points. And I think that the more that they can continue to build on that offensive spark, I think that the better they'll be. And they're going to, I think they proved against Carleton, they're going to be in a lot of games this year. And I think that, as we talked about the men, I don't think teams can take St. Mary's lightly, and I think if they don't be careful, St. Mary's is going to really sneak up on them.
Yeah, 2 other players I just want you to touch on a little bit from the women's basketball team. One would be Steffley, the freshman post player. Another one that's not going to show up in the box scores very often, but has, I think, contributed some key minutes off the bench, especially in the rebounding category, is Sarah Adey.
Yeah, Jamie Steffley is really coming on as a solid post player. She had 11 rebounds on Saturday against St. Benedict, which is really great to see. And I know Coach Pearson talks very highly of her. And
you can see she's very athletic, and you can see her developing.
Yep,
right along.
and Adey as well. I mean, she's one of those girls that is going to provide the minutes that Coach Pearson needs to allow some of those starters to rest. And it's nice for Coach Pearson to have more than 5 or 6 people that she can rely on. She can go to her bench for 3 or 4 people, get them in the game, and really not drop off as much as she has in the past. So that's obviously a good thing, and I think that as those type of people continue to get some experience. And, college basketball is a lot different than high school. And for a lot of these people, we're throwing them to the fire right away. So it does take a little time. And I think that you're seeing some of that progress. Jamie Steffley, again, the game she had against St. Ben's is her coming out party and proving that against the best team in the conference, she's able to pull down 11 rebounds. That's a phenomenal performance.
Right. So men's hockey now, let's go to that. And most hockey teams this time of season have a very long layoff from early December to early January, about a month. But the men's hockey team for St. Mary's did get some hockey in at a tournament just past Christmas.
Yeah, nice of them. They were on the road. They went out to Rhode Island, played in the Nichols Holiday Tournament, where they went, well, it depends how you want to term it. They went 1-0-1 or they went 0-1-1. They actually tied host Nichols 4-4, and because it was a 4-team tournament and they needed to determine a winner, they had a shootout, which St. Mary's won 1-0. So in tournament form, they won the game, but in the form of what it does to their record, it was a
shootout.
tie.
Yeah, tie.
Correct.
Okay.
So they tied that game, and then they lost to Wesleyan College 5-3 in the championship game, in a game that I know Coach Moore would love to play that third period over again.
Yeah, they had a lead in that one.
Yeah,
right?
they were up 3-1 going
yeah.
into the third, gave up 4 third period goals. So I know that's a period that he would really like to replay. But I think overall he was pretty pleased with the way that they played. It's coming off of a break, and their last game was early December, so they had really almost an entire month off before they played another game. So I think that just getting a couple games in was good for him, but obviously he'd like to see a few more wins.
Yeah, and then for fans in Winona who want to see some hockey, a couple of home games this weekend for the men's team. They're home both Friday night and Saturday night, 7 o'clock against Eau Claire and River Falls.
Yeah, you talk about for the home fans, St. Mary's has played 11 games, 10 of which have been on the road. Right. So none of us have gotten to see the men's hockey team play. It's like the big secret. So it'll be their unveiling this weekend, and I know that Coach Moore is really excited about finally getting to play in front of the home crowd. St. Mary's always draws very well. We get a great support from the community, and the stands are full, the crowd is loud, and I think it makes a big difference. And to have to play 10 of your first 11 games on the road is very difficult and not an easy thing to do. So I know that he's excited not only for this weekend, but for the once they get back into conference play and you're playing every other day at home, is going to be a real nice thing for
and
them.
Eau Claire, River Falls, usually pretty good competition.
Very
right?
good competition. Unfortunately, we've played River Falls already once this year. It was our last game before break, lost 7-0. So I know that Coach Moore and the Cardinals want another shot at River Falls, and hopefully with a different outcome.
Yep. And finally, swimming and diving, Donny, as they've been off as well, but the big home meet this upcoming weekend, the triangular.
Yeah,
right?
they've got a triangular this weekend against Carleton and Luther, and then next weekend they've got a quadrangular, which will actually be their last home meet of the season. Interesting, we talk about training and teams that are coming back from breaks and getting some practice, and they went to Florida for their training. I guess Eric didn't want them to swim outside, or wanted them to swim outside, so he took them to Florida for a week, and they did a lot of training down in the Fort Lauderdale area. And so he's real excited about this weekend to get back into a competitive mode, because they've really been off since late November in a competitive form. So he's excited to see how they stack up. Obviously, we talk many times that swimming is one of those sports that it only matters at the MIAC, but you get this triangular. He's going to be excited to see how his team is stacking up, how they've improved their times, and you can only do that when you have a competitive form.
And we've talked to Eric before about these training trips. They're important because they get to gel as a team outside of the Winona area, and it usually comes across pretty well in the results later on in the year.
Absolutely, I know he's already pointing toward the conference championships, which are coming up in the middle of February, and I know that this meet this weekend and the home meet next weekend are integral to their training and to their preparation for that 3-day event.
Right, and it's Luther and Carleton
Correct.
This week, right? All right, stay tuned here to the Cardinals Nest on HBC. When we come back, and we'll talk to Terry Mannor and Nicole Olson from the women's hockey team. That's next here on HBC.
It's been a great experience. I would recommend it to anybody. There's a lot of little guys out there that need help and need a male role model to look up to and help them with various aspects of their life.
Yeah, because of him I got very good grades right now. I thought that I would get bad grades by myself, but now that I have Marcus around, I have better grades.
If you want to be a part of it, contact Big Brothers Big Sisters of Winona at 452-2227. It's easier than you think. You don't have to change your life to change his life.
And welcome back to the Cardinals Nest on HBC Channel 25. Dean Beckman, Donny Nadeau, now joined by our guests on the interview portion of the program today. We have Terry Mannor, the head coach for the women's hockey team, and Nicole Olson, one of his sophomore players, joining us. And thanks so much again for being on the Cardinals Nest. And Terry, you've done this many times, and so you sort of know what to expect from this guy, right?
Try to fill Nicole in a little bit on what to expect. So.
Well, and Nicole, it'll help you getting questions from Donny here because you're one of his student workers, so you're used to his hijinks, right?
Yes, I am.
We'll be nice to you. We always throw a little easy question, and the first one is obviously when you were born, which we know was yesterday, 20 years ago. So again, happy birthday to you.
Thank you.
If you could just give us a little background on where you're from, when you started playing hockey, why you came to St. Mary's, that would be great.
I am from New Brighton, Minnesota, and I went to Irondale High School, which is in New Brighton, and I played there since I was in 8th grade for hockey. I also played softball for them, and it's a nice hometown kind of feel of the city. Hope to live there, following here in Winona for St. Mary's, and yeah, I had a great time there.
How about here? What made you want to come to St. Mary's?
I loved the feel of it. Right when I stepped on campus, I loved the campus, and it's a very pretty area. And meeting Terry and the rest of the coaching staff for hockey, and then the softball coaching staff as well, I was very excited about the school right away, and I just knew that I would like to come here for college.
Nicole, I'm just curious, while you were in high school, did playing 2 sports in college occur to you? Was that something you sought out, or just an opportunity that arose when you started talking to St. Mary's?
I knew it would be really hard to pick one sport. So I knew if there was any way I could play both, that would be ideal. So it was great when I came here to hear that I could play both, which is unlike some other schools. They don't really like that, and they kind of want you to stick to one sport. So when St. Mary's said they're very pro 2-sport athletes, that was great.
I know, Coach, you've been actually a vocal supporter of athletes playing 2 sports. Talk a little bit about your reasoning for that.
My biggest thing is for them to enjoy their collegiate experience as much as possible. And if they have the opportunity to play multiple sports, fantastic, do it. They're not going to be able to play competitive sports much longer in their life. So for them to have the opportunity, I strongly encourage it. Now, obviously, they have to be, they have to understand that different seasons, they overlap. It's more difficult academically for them. But as long as they can understand that and accomplish it, go for it.
And it's interesting. You have them on both ends of the spectrum. You've got a volleyball player, Tara Rasmussen, who is also a hockey player, and now you've got a hockey player in Nicole, who's also a softball player. So you've got one that comes a little bit late, and then you'll have one who stays for this sport late and then joins softball after that.
We actually have 3 softball players.
Okay.
So two of them are freshmen. So Nicole's been very good with them, getting them to understand what's expected and those types of things.
Nicole, is it hard to be a 2-sport athlete here? Is it, Coach Mannor talked about the academics part. How do you juggle playing hockey, playing softball, and doing all your academics as well?
It's definitely tough. Right when I get here right away for school, we start the softball and the hockey players kind of juggle both at the same time. We have foul ball for softball, and then we're doing captains for hockey at the same time, so that's tough. And then once hockey season starts, then I'm all about hockey and kind of put softball on hold for a little bit. And then on my own, February is usually once softball starts February 1st, I kind of start to take some batting practices by myself or with some of the girls that are going to be playing both. And then when hockey's done, next day I go to softball. But juggling that with school, and it gets to be a lot, but it's doable. And I also think being on a schedule like that, knowing what time you have to be at practice and times that you're in class, it helps to kind of prioritize yourself and know what time you have to get homework done, and it helps a lot.
I would guess you're a highly structured person, and I'm sure for someone who is highly structured, 2 sports forces you into that sort of routine, right?
Definitely, but I really like that.
And what's your major, Nicole? And
criminal justice major and minor in sociology.
All right, terrific. So, yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, Coach, we've kind of grilled Nicole here. Let's talk a little bit about the season. You're heading into this weekend 5-4-1. Not a bad start to the year, but it seems like you've been off forever. You haven't played since the middle of December, and now it's really the second week of January, and you're just starting up again. Talk about that break and the positives and the negatives to something like that.
The positives are it gives the athletes a break. A break obviously away from school academics, but also to kind of heal their body up a little bit. They get beat up the first part, The negatives are they're away from hockey. We've spent X amount of time getting them in condition to the point where we want, and now they're away. So we really have to rely on them to maintain their conditioning. This year, this is my 5th year with the women, this is the best conditioned team coming back from break that we've ever had. We're very, very happy about that. So I don't think in that aspect we lost much, to be honest with you. But again, just getting back into competition, you can only compete against each other so much, and you definitely don't compete against each other at the level that you do against somebody else. So looking forward to playing some.
Saturday, Sunday series this weekend against Marion, non-conference games. How important are those games to getting you ready? Because now you get ready for a stretch run of pretty much all conference games. How important are these 2 games to see where you're at heading into the conference?
I think right now we're pretty confident as to where we're at already. These games being non-conference and being obviously out of it. We also have one more non-conference game against Gustavus the following weekend. Looking more forward to that one, to be honest with you. But these games hopefully will do good for our confidence. Be able to get some people in some ice time that they haven't had so much. But again, we don't have any idea what to expect from Marion. Their first-year program. Haven't seen them play. Talked to a few coaches about them, but again, looking forward to just competing with somebody else.
Terry and Nicole, either one of you can answer this really. The first part of the season, what was the thing you were happiest with as far as the team is concerned, and what was the one thing maybe you would have liked to have seen the outcome a little bit differently?
I thought that the girls coming into the season, we were all very kind of upset about how the season ended last year, and we were very determined to do better this year, and we're confident a lot more than last year, and that's always good to see, and I think it's very evident watching us play this year. Right. So that was always good.
Okay, so going into the season, just the team attitude was a real strength, right? Okay. How about something that happened, Terry, that you wish the outcome would have been differently?
Our first game. First period, we were up 3-0. We end up losing 5-4. Against a very strong Lake Forest program. I'm not sure what they're ranked now in the nation, but they're in the top 10. But I think that propelled their season, having come back from that. Whereas I think it hurt us for the next couple games. The next game, following game, definitely we just weren't there. So you always want to start strong, and we started strong for the first 20 minutes. But then, now unfortunately, our sophomore goalie, who was a returning all-conference honorable mention, got a concussion in that game. Being a competitor as she is, she didn't say anything, so she finished out that game. But we lost her for her career now because of it. But I think that game, losing Madeline, but also just being up 3-0 and losing really stung.
Okay.
You kind of look at your season so far as you started out, as you said, you started out with 3 straight losses. Since that time you've been 5-1-1. What was the difference between those first 3 games and where you're at as you close that first part of the season?
I think bottom line, as Nicole said, people were disappointed, and they came to the season much more determined. If you look at our third loss to Eau Claire, it was a 2-1, and we outplayed them, I felt, for 60 minutes. The second, our first win was Eau Claire again. It was a 2-1, very close, and we outplayed them. I just think, plain and simple, they're very determined right now, and that's bottom line the difference between years past and this year.
Obviously, balance has been a key for you this year. I know the last couple of years, your scoring was 1 or 2 people. This year, it's really spread out, and that seems to be something that's obviously, we talked about basketball. That's nice for the basketball teams that they don't have to rely on 1 or 2 people. It's got to be the same for hockey as well.
It's definitely the same. When you can get scoring from multiple people, the other coach cannot match up lines because everybody's a threat. And at the same time, I feel it doesn't put pressure on 1 or 2 people to score.
Now, you hate to put pressure on anybody or put anybody on the spot, but you have, one very important person, and that is Kate Collier in goal. She's been, since Madeline was out, she's been your person between the pipes. Has she lived up to the expectation you had of her, or has she exceeded it, or?
She's lived up to our expectation. We knew coming into the season that she was going to be a very, very good goalie. She was highly sought after by a lot of schools. And she chose us for very much the same reasons Nicole chose us, just like the atmosphere, like the people. She's definitely lived up to what we expected.
Well, and also only 3 seniors on your team this year. Nicole, it's a young team again. You're one of those younger players. Talk about having just 3 seniors on the team and how some of the other players have had to pick up some of those leadership duties.
I think that's huge when there is only 3 seniors, so it kind of puts the onus on the younger players, and we know next year without them, they'll be greatly missed, and they're great leaders on our team. But it does put the onus on others to kind of step up and know that they're not going to be there next year. So let's have a good foundation this year to build off of for next year.
You know, Terry, you talked about looking forward or looking ahead a little bit to next weekend against Gustavus. You have an interesting scheduling quirk in your scheduling that you do have a non-conference game against a conference opponent, that being, of course, probably the best team in the conference in Gustavus. Talk a little bit about that game and how you'll approach that compared to how you'll approach playing them, I think it's a couple weeks later when you play them for a conference series.
You know, bottom line, I think I'm going to approach it. We're going to have to work throughout the week on a lot of defense because I mean, Gustavus is a very, very offensive team. But I'm going to look at it, not going to change our approach and how we play the game, but I definitely want to see it as a measuring stick. I want the players to see, because as you said, I mean, Gustavus has won, I think, the last 6 or 7 conference championships. I actually really enjoy having them as a non-conference game. They sought us out because they wanted our competition for this. Which I mean, our players should be very proud of that. He wanted to play first semester. I wanted to play second semester closer to when we play them. So I'm just looking for a measuring stick right now.
And Terry, finally, last question. I know there's a lot of the conference season left, but how are things sort of playing itself out as far as a conference tournament appearance goes? What do you have to do to get that spot there?
Well, we have 12 more games left. Right now, we're fit. We put ourselves in a very good situation. 2 of our 3 series that we've already had were against teams that made the playoffs last year, and we were 3-1 against them. So right now, we just got to take every weekend one game at a time. Not look ahead again. I made the mistake of saying I'm looking ahead to Gustavus, which you should never do. But we got to play every game, and if we play the way we're capable, we should be sitting in a good position. Yeah.
All right, Terry Mannor, Nicole Olson, thanks for being on the show. Happy birthday this week here, Nicole, and good luck the rest of the season here.
Thank you very much.
All right, stay tuned. Donnie and I will be right back, and we'll do a little preview of the track and field season. We'll do that next here on the Cardinals Nest.
With objects coming right out of the screen, so real. Prepared by Dr. Bryant to determine your ability to withstand shock.
The carnival looks so. Coming to get you, Barbara.
Feed me. Ooh.
Thanks for watching the Cardinals Nest here on HBC as we're back to wrap things up now. And Donnie, we heard from Terry Mannor, Nicole Olson from the women's hockey team, and so many of the sports now here in the first part of 2010 really getting into the bulk of their season. Other sports, winter sports, are just starting, with track and field being one of them. Next weekend, they open up their indoor season at Eau Claire.
Yeah, for Coach McMahon, I know he's very excited to finally get things rolling, and I know he looks forward to January 1 because then we're getting close to the start of his indoor season, and it's interesting for track and field. They really have 2 different seasons, but it starts January 1 and they go all the way through May. I mean, it's if you really look at it, it's one long season. It just happens that half of it they run inside and the other half they run outside. So I know he's looking forward to to a good year. He's got some outstanding athletes coming back. He's got some very good recruits coming in. So it's an exciting time. I know he's hosting a meet this year indoors, and then obviously he's looking forward to hosting a meet on the new track outdoors, as well as hosting the MIAC Outdoor Championships on our track. So it's going to be a busy track season in terms of not only in their competition, but also in terms of having things on our campus, which will be really fun this year, having our own home meet indoors, our own home meet outdoors, and then also the conference championships. So obviously we'll be talking a lot of track and field as it gets closer. We'll have Coach McMahon on, and I'm sure he'll talk all about our new track and obviously the conference championships. So it's going to be an exciting time for the track and field teams.
Yep. All right. Should be fun. That's going to do it for this Cardinals Nest here on HBC Channel 25. Thanks for watching. Tune in again next week for another Cardinals Nest right here on HBC.